The automatic camera clicked steadily as Major Robert Cowboy Stout's F-6H Hellcat glided over the island of Peleliu at 8,000 feet. The date was September 12, 1944. His orders were simple: photograph the northern airfield and return directly to the USS Hornet. Intelligence briefings had assured him the airfield was abandoned, likely crippled by previous bombing raids. But when Stout peered down through the cockpit glass, his breath caught. Below him, the supposedly deserted field teemed with activity. Japanese aircraft, Mitsubishi Zeros and Nakajima bombers, stood packed wingtip to wingtip. Fuel drums gleamed in neat rows, while ground crews swarmed around the planes like ants. This was no ruin. It was a fully operational base preparing for a massive strike. Stout quickly counted at least 40 aircraft, all fueled, armed, and ready to go. And he understood instantly what they were waiting for. In just 3 days, 28,000 U.S. Marines would storm Peleliu's beaches in one of the largest amphibious assaults of the Pacific War. The invasion fleet was already en route. Those Japanese aircraft could massacre the Marines before they even reached shore. Stout knew the rules: spot, report, return. Reconnaissance pilots were the eyes of the fleet, not the fists. Engaging was forbidden, especially alone, above an airfield bristling with anti-aircraft guns. But he also knew how slowly military bureaucracy moved. By the time he landed, filed his report, and command organized a strike, hours would be lost. Time the Japanese would use to scatter their planes, or worse, launch them toward the invasion fleet. The Marines didn't have hours. They needed those aircraft gone now. He climbed slightly, circling to survey the field more closely. Then he saw it, their fatal mistake. The Japanese had parked the planes far too close together, surrounding them with exposed fuel drums. One lucky strike could trigger a chain reaction that would obliterate the entire base. Stout checked his armament: 6 .50 caliber Browning machine guns with 2,400 rounds, barely 12 seconds of total firing time. Not enough to destroy 40 aircraft one by one, but perhaps enough to ignite that deadly fuse. Robert Stout wasn't a reckless man. At 28, he was already a veteran of 63 combat missions. He had fought Zeros head-on, strafed fortified positions, and landed on carrier decks in storms that grounded lesser pilots. He knew the razor-thin line between bravery and suicide, and right now, he was standing on it. If he attacked, every gun on Peleliu would target him. Alone, at low altitude, without cover, he'd be shredded in seconds if his luck ran out. But if he didn't attack, those planes would strike the fleet and kill hundreds of Marines before the first boots hit the sand. He'd seen it happen before, at Tarawa, when Japanese bombers pounced on the landing craft. The memory of helplessly watching men die from the cockpit burned in his mind. He wouldn't let it happen again. The decision took less than 30 seconds. Stout shoved the throttle forward, rolled the Hellcat into a dive, and aimed for the treetops. The altimeter spun down as wind screamed over the canopy. His plan was simple: come in fast and low, ignite the fuel drums, and escape before the gunners found their mark. At 2,000 feet, he leveled off, throttle slammed to the firewall. The Hellcat thundered forward at nearly 400 miles per hour, barely 50 feet above the jungle canopy. The airfield appeared suddenly through a break in the trees. Japanese ground crews froze as the American fighter roared overhead. Some dropped their tools, others dove for cover. None made it to their guns in time. Stout lined up on the northern row and squeezed the trigger. The Hellcat's 6 guns roared as one, stitching bright lines of fire across the tarmac. Bullets ripped through a Zero's wings, spraying fuel from ruptured tanks. He adjusted his aim toward a stack of fuel drums and fired again. The drums erupted. Aviation fuel ignited in a massive fireball that engulfed the nearest bombers and blasted Stout's aircraft with turbulence. He yanked the Hellcat upward, feeling the shockwave buffet his wings. Below, the flames leapt higher, spreading from one plane to the next like a chain of fuses catching light. Within seconds, half the airfield was ablaze. Anti-aircraft gunners finally manned their positions and opened fire, but Stout was already climbing, zigzagging to spoil their aim. Tracers whipped past the cockpit. The Hellcat shuddered as rounds punched through its tail. Warning lights flickered, but the engine held strong. Circling back, he saw the inferno below. 20 aircraft burning, black smoke billowing thousands of feet skyward. But the southern end still held another 20. His ammunition was half gone. Returning for a second pass was suicide. He rolled inverted and dove anyway. Flak filled the air instantly. Tracers streaked like fiery threads around him. He jinked left, then right, never flying straight long enough to give the gunners a target. At barely 200 feet, he leveled off and opened fire again. His rounds tore into the southern bombers, then a fuel truck. The explosion flipped a nearby plane onto its back, and secondary blasts followed. Ammunition, fuel, bombs, all detonating in quick succession. Within moments, the southern field was a sea of fire. His guns clicked empty. The Hellcat felt sluggish, wounded. Something leaked behind him, and smoke trailed faintly from the fuselage. But it didn't matter. The airfield below was gone. Every plane, every drum, every structure was burning. He turned toward the ocean, hydraulics failing, oil pressure dropping. He wasn't sure his landing gear would deploy, but the engine still roared. The flight back to the Hornet felt endless as adrenaline drained, leaving only exhaustion and dread. He had just disobeyed a direct order. When the carrier came into view, he radioed for an emergency landing. One wheel locked, the other didn't. He came in hot, catching the second arresting wire in a bone-jarring slam that buckled the deck. Crewmen rushed to his side, stunned at the battered, smoke-streaked Hellcat. Officers crowded him with questions: why he'd broken radio silence, why a recon pilot had returned with battle damage. Stout's answer was calm, almost matter-of-fact. The airfield wasn't abandoned. It was full of aircraft. I destroyed them. All of them. The officers didn't believe it until reconnaissance photos confirmed the truth the next day. The northern airfield at Peleliu was nothing but charred wreckage. Exactly 40 aircraft destroyed, fuel dumps vaporized, the Japanese air threat wiped out before it ever launched. For his daring action, Major Stout received the Navy Cross, the second highest U.S. combat decoration. His heroism had saved countless lives. When the Marines landed 3 days later, they faced brutal resistance on the ground, but none from the sky. The Battle of Peleliu lasted for over 2 months and cost nearly 2,000 American lives. Yet historians estimate Stout's attack over Peleliu saved at least 500 to 1,000 Marines in the invasion's first hours alone. After the war, Stout returned quietly to California. He rarely spoke of that day. His Navy Cross sat in a drawer, not seen by visitors. Friends described him as humble, even uneasy with praise. When asked, he'd shrug. I saw planes that needed destroying, so I destroyed them. Anyone would have done the same. But not anyone would have. Most would have followed orders. Stout's decision, 8 minutes of independent action, became a case study in military initiative. He understood the difference between obeying instructions and fulfilling a mission's true intent. Modern pilots still study his attack. The tactical precision, the target prioritization, and the courage to act without waiting for permission. 1 man, 1 aircraft, 8 minutes. 40 enemy planes destroyed, perhaps 1,000 lives saved. Robert Cowboy Stout passed away in 2005 at the age of 91. Historians now regard his strike over Peleliu as one of the most effective solo attacks in naval aviation history. His story endures as a timeless lesson. Sometimes the greatest act of loyalty is the courage to disobey orders when duty and conscience demand it.